Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. Kind of stumbled there. For today's episode, I'm gonna talk about the latest episode of Beauty and the Beast. Did it again, as well as the season finale of Orphan Black. Starting off with Beauty and the Beast, very interesting episode. Main theme behind this episode is juggling. Basically, everyone kind of juggling their lives. Everyone kind of having their problems. Obviously, Kathryn and Vince's biggest problem is trying to balance their married life with their jobs, him being a doctor, her being a cop, as well as, during this whole thing, hunting down the person who is connected to going after Vincent because he's a beast. Then you also have Tess and JT, because of the whole JT not telling Tess about hey, I actually turned down my tenure. He wanted to on multiple occasions, but he couldn't bring himself to do it because he was so afraid of how she reacted. It wasn't until Heather kind of pointed out the reasons why I was like, it's not that big of a deal, just tell her. But it's like, no, because telling her would mean that he's no longer employed, meaning they can't move in together. And I was like, okay, I kind of see where he's going, where she'd interpret that as him not wanting to move in together. And, it kind of brings up a valid point because it also means, like, for one, it's like, two, it's also like, she was okay with it because she's like, okay, like at the end of the day, because she ended up finding out, obviously, because the landlord ended up calling her, but she was like, it's fine. She's like, I've reached this point where it's like professionally and personally, I know what I want, and it's just like, JT, you still haven't figured out what that means. So obviously that means they can't move in together. It wasn't really said out loud, but that's kind of what it was kind of interpreted. It's not like they're breaking up. I was like, please don't make this lead to a breakup. It's like, no, I mean, because they still love each other. It's just he's not ready to move forward because he doesn't know what he wants. Because she's like, that's why you've been so reluctant to pack your stuff up. Because she's like, you literally don't have that much stuff. It's like, in the amount of time that's passed, you could have easily packed up all your stuff. And it's like, he obviously does love her, but there is something kind of holding him back because he does want more. But I guess, like, something else that was while I was watching the episode kind of crossed my mind. I was like, I guess it kind of also, like, it was never really brought up per se, maybe not in direct words, but it's also, he made that decision without her. Like, that's his girlfriend. Like, if he decides to, like, kind of turn down his job, it's not just something that affects you, it affects her as well, especially considering the fact that you're moving in together. So she was slightly pissed at him, but, she also kind of sort of forgave him. Not really. She just wasn't as mad as she would have been. Because, I mean, also you have to consider what Tess kind of had to go through this episode with Kathryn, becoming, a DHS agent temporarily because the deputy of secretary of the DHS hired her, essentially, because it's like, you'll be able to get more results if you work with us because you'll have the DHS's help, have access to its resources. Which the whole thing I kind of cringed a little bit. I had to look at it, I was like, ooh, like when she took over Tess's case. Because to me, like, obviously Tess brought up many examples of like why the situation kind of sucked. Because for one, it's her best friend, all right? Like, it's kind of like, she was excited about it. She's like, oh, me and Kathryn are going to work this case together again. We, like when we worked together last episode, it felt so good. It felt like the good times because, now that when I became captain, I wasn't able to go out on, do a lot of like go out in the field and do work. But it's like now I'm taking more time to do that. I can join up with my old partner, like the good old days. But now she doesn't have that opportunity because now Kathryn kind of has to walk away from the precinct and be a DHS agent, not necessarily full-time. I mean, really, it really hasn't really settled into whether or not that's what she's going to do or not. For now, her main reason for doing it is to help out Vincent. I mean, it was kind of thrown at her. She didn't really ask for it. It was just kind of tossed upon her. But the way Tess was kind of talking about it by the end of the episode, it seemed like it might be a permanent thing because she even turned in her badge. And that was kind of that, like, that's what I was saying, like, it's stacked upon itself. Because for one, the stuff at the beginning was obviously Tess is like, oh, she's like her best friend is kind of taking over her case. And not just any case, a case that Tess has worked on for a very long time. Two, it's also because, like, Kathryn's her best friend. It was me, she won't be able to work with her best friend. And three, just on a professional level, it's also because, she's in a higher position than Kathryn, but now Kathryn's in an even higher position to her and is able to take away her case from her just like that. So there is a slight animosity there. She's like, I'm happy for you, but at the same time, you're like taking away my case. It's like, in her words, it's like, oh, the FBI were kind of always supposed to become, like, feds are supposed to become, not FBI, but feds are supposed to kind of be like the bad guys, kind of local cops. So they're supposed to be the enemy. So having to turn her badge in, and it's like hard for Tess too because that was her partner for 10 years. They've worked together for so long, they got to know each other, and it's just they've been through so much. But Kathryn's defense is also like it also bring normalcy back to their lives because it also means Tess won't have to cover for her as much anymore. So she kind of laps it off, but I'm sure she'll appreciate it. I did kind of feel bad for JT at that moment when Tess kind of figured out. She's like, oh yeah, kind of helped Vincent find the guy that they were investigating because he had Kathryn because of that whole illegal fighting ring. And then Vincent was leaving. He was like, I love you. He's like, oh, I love you, for helping me out. And then Tess was like, at least somebody does. And then when she was walking out, JT was kind of mumbling himself, I love you. I was like, I felt bad for her. I was like, poor JT, dude, that sucks. It's like, but once again, it's kind of his fault for lying to her. But I kind of halfway expected this guy not to be connected to the whole beast, like coming after Vincent because he's a beast thing. But I did like the whole fighting ring. I like the fact is it's like, oh, you were so certain it was going to be Vincent fighting, and then it's like, actually no, you already missed the men's fighting portion. Now it's ladies, so Kat's up fighting. And I love how because you would think like with the show, like okay, like Kat's just going to go in there and whoop Taylor. It's like no, she's not a trained fighter. She can handle her own in a fight, but she's not a trained fighter like some of those other ladies were. Like one being a kickboxer, and it's like they've had more practice in like kind of hand-to-hand combat, like Kat hasn't. And, it's like, they didn't do the thing where it'd be like, oh, she automatically wins. It's like, no, she kind of had to, not really cheat, but kind of play a little dirty, just kind of get like, but it's like with those type of fights, it's like there is no playing dirty. Like, for instance, Vince had told her to aim for that kickboxer's knee because it was like a recent surgery. And I was like, wow. And she got the other lady by doing like a surprise spin kick on her. So that was that. I did like the fact is that Vincent was cheering for her. It's just like, obviously, he probably had to play it up a little bit because of the circumstances, but it did seem like he was kind of getting into it. Like, yeah, go get him, honey. Yeah, babe. Yeah, you kick her butt. I mean, that's just how I was. I just felt about it. Side note, this isn't really just about the TV show. It's just kind of like like outside the show, kind of just an acting thing. I love the fact that it's like, I can never remember the actress's name. She's the actress who played Zed on Constantine. The most recent time I've seen her was on an episode of Castle. She played her Javier's like ex who was a criminal. Like, it's not that important. It's just like, I happened to notice that was her. And I feel so bad because when I see her, I'm like, I still don't know your name. I feel so bad for her because I even looked it up to make sure that was her. Like when I saw her in an episode of Castle and it was her. And it's just like, I felt like such an idiot for not remembering her name this time. Just a little side note I felt like throwing in there. It's not important, not at all important to the episode, just something I just couldn't help but noticing. But to me, like it kept nagging, like getting at me. I think it's Kyle. I don't know, in some shape or form, because he's a little too like, I don't know, he's too aggressive with trying to go after Heather. It's like, oh, you might be like, oh, it's just because he likes her and she likes him, and it's obviously they're keeping their distance. Obviously Heather's got her reason because of the whole like, oh, we got to stay away from people because don't want to drag them into this whole situation. I mean, it kind of sucks on Heather's part because you can kind of see it was stressing her out because for one, she already had to deal with like, she was kind of their like Vincent and Kathryn's assistant trying to help them out with their whole situation, but their financial situation is very complicated. On top of that, you combine that with their already complicated situation of like, the beast thing. That's just, their life is extremely complicated, and just on top of that, Heather's not being able to be with the guy she obviously has feelings for, who obviously has feelings for her, but he's too, what's the word I'm looking for, he's too pestering. He just pops up too much to be like, oh, I want to insert myself in your life. Maybe at the end of it all, he'll just end up being a regular guy. But I'm getting the feeling that either he's associated with the people after Vincent, or he might be the bad guy himself. Why? Just because I like those type of plot twists. I love it when you don't see the bad guy coming, when it's like, oh yeah, you thought this person was just background, something in the background, like just a story filler. But it's like, nope, he has a purpose because so-and-so character is actually the main antagonist, or at least a really bad guy you just don't realize. And I feel like that might be the case because remember, Vince's identity hasn't been outed, as a beast. So it's not like the person who put the 5 million on his head, would know where to look. He knows the general area to look, but not pinpoint accuracy. So he does know Heather, but he's never. I'm about to say he's never actually made contact with Kathryn, but I was like, no, he did the time that she walked in on him and Heather having sex. But because I feel like he would have made more chances to try and get closer to Kathryn, but it's like the easiest way to do that is through Heather. Like I said, he's inserting himself too much in her life for me to think he's. I mean, like I said, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but my gut feeling is telling me it's that guy. I don't, like I said, don't know what this is all about. Like, obviously, some people want a beast just because it's like, hey, it's a great trophy. But what could that person want? Maybe they want to also become a beast too, considering like, I mean, because, Vincent is kind of special because out of all the beasts that have ever existed, he is the last one standing. So it's like out of him, for one, he's the last of his kind, like, quote unquote, the last of his kind. So that means if you want to replicate that, you need him. Two, he's got to be the toughest of them if he survived all of this. So I don't know. That's just how I'm feeling about the whole situation. But it would be very interesting to see how things proceed from here, with Kat being a DHS agent, I did wonder if that was going to kind of create a rift between her and Tess, but it seems like she's going to be off doing her own thing and Tess is going to be doing hers. But in the future, because of her new position, it will probably end up leading to more conflict in the future of like, Kat needs to take over more of her cases, not just because it's DSH stuff, it's also because it's also related to, Vincent. And, and eventually maybe Tess will eventually start holding her, like, even more animosity towards her. Like, okay, I get you're trying to help out Vincent and everything and you're doing your new job, but I don't appreciate the fact is we're besties. We used to be partners for 10 years and you're going to try to screw me over like this. Like I said, we saw it to a small degree in this episode. Not as big as I thought we would. Obviously because they're such good friends, she, held any resentment. But it'd be kind of interesting to see if that kind of comes back. Also like to see where her and JT kind of stand, Tess and JT stand now. That whole tenure thing's out there in the open is like, what is it exactly he wants? Because he doesn't know. And I'm quite interested to find out what he does want to do with his life. So just a very interesting episode, and I'm very interested to see where everything goes next week. And now, moving on to this week's episode, of Orphan Black, the season finale. I meant to say that, but nevertheless, an amazing episode. So much went down this episode. Don't even know where to start. Okay, because it's the first thing popping in my brain. Evie has been taken out of the picture. Obviously, like, it seems like the Brightborn has like a board, which I love that Siobhan kind of brought that up in the episode. It was like a one line of just, there's always a board. But essentially, they were basically like, trying to cut Evie out because it's like, yeah, your face you've been tarnished by the public. But it's like the Brightborn can just kind of like kick you out and just kind of wash its hands of you. But Evie was like, no, I built all this, how dare you turn against me? And that guy ended up activate kind of her right hand man. Apparently he was kind of like a mentor to him. I forgot what his name is, but he activated the bot in her mouth and ended up, we can only assume, killed her. Which there's a part of me that's like, I slightly feel bad for Evie, but at the same time, that part of my like feeling bad for her is completely is then overwritten by the fact is, yeah, you had Kendall killed, so screw you. So I'm not going to mourn you that much, but I do feel bad that you got betrayed. But then again, you've spent all this time trying to backstab Susan and rise to the top of kind of Neo-Lucian. So it's kind of like, screw you. You've done a lot of backstabbing, so it's only, justified that you get backstabbed. So there's that. We also, there was a cure found. Cosima finally doing her thing, doing her scientific thing, was able to find a cure. But it turns out, to almost no one's surprise, honestly, I was a little surprised. Susan actually was only using this as an opportunity to continue the cloning process. Because essentially, it's like, yes, Cosima overhears it and it's like, you just used me. She's like, you should have known because this was already on the table. This was kind of on the table when I originally came to you about getting Kendall's genome, which is true. But you kind of were thinking like, oh yeah, she kind of let it go. Especially, Cosima kind of spent more time around her because Susan's actually the first other scientist other than Delphine and Leaky to a certain degree that she's really kind of gotten attached to and hung around. But it was just, also because, to a degree, well, not to a degree directly, she is their mother, so that's why it kind of comes as a betrayal in that regard too. But I guess in Susan's defense, it's like, yeah, we need the cure too, so we can, like, in the case this problem kind of presents itself in the other clone, we'll have the cure. But it's like, Cosima's like, you're just going to end up making, I'm not going to help you with making mistakes like me again. Now, I didn't know how to interpret that, whether she was talking about clones in general, where it's like, oh, you making mistakes as like in making them infertile, or mistakes of like the fact is like Cosima herself is sick and you're just like, oh, you just make more clones that are sick and putting them in that position. Could have been a few clones. To our knowledge, though, there's only one. To my recollection, there's only one that's died from the sickness. There were others that were sick. The German one back in season 1, she was sick, but she ended up dying before she could die from her illness. So, what else went down in this episode? We saw her to a much lesser degree, but Helena did appear in this episode, but it seems like, she's kind of hiding Donnie and Allison. Obviously, she saved them last episode, but they're kind of hiding out in the wild with her. That was kind of the only thing we saw. Now, granted, there was a little bit of an extended look that was kind of, to an extended scene is the word I'm looking for. That was kind of showed a little bit more of that situation of them hiding out there and just while Sarah went to go get Cosima off the island. So that was kind of nice, seeing like what their situation is right now. But we also, along with Susan's kind of like, I was like, oh, I'm going to go back to be the top of Neolution again. And we had Rachel's, nothing like, there's no surprise. She ends up going to the board, trying to grab for power. It's like, oh no, Rachel is going to make a grab for power. I already saw that coming. That comes as no surprise. Because I didn't 100% believe that what she did last episode was, for the right of everyone. I figured she was just trying to get Evie out of the way because, like I said last time, she said all that stuff to get Evie to confess to what she had done, but it was like, that didn't take any truth away from what she was already saying. Like, I already knew there was a lot of truth in that. And that led to very interesting conversations. So essentially when she came in front of the board, because originally it was supposed to be Susan, but she kind of backstabbed Susan and kind of moved up the meeting. And essentially she's basically combining the two science experiments, essentially taking the bots as well as cloning. And essentially they're going to start implanting the bots into clones as well as the future generation. So including this generation of clones, but also future generation clones. And now, like the kind of metaphor that she gave to kind of show what kind of like how they were going to handle this situation is like if they needed to study if you were to cut off their tail and it would grow back, if we needed to study something like that, then we will make the choice of cutting off their tails. No more pussyfooting around playing, doing this whole monitoring thing. It's like, as scientists, we do what is necessary to get to get the results, as well as see how our experiment is going, really testing the waters like we need to as scientists, essentially, which is very cold-hearted of her, because it's like Susan kind of put it best. It's like you're literally turning your back on not just me, but also your sisters and yourself. And that also led to something very interesting when it ended with Susan essentially, when Rachel stabbed Susan. I was a little scared because I saw her kind of glitching and saw that duck, like the beheaded goose, and I was like, oh crap, she's about to cut Susan's head off, isn't she? And she stabbed her, which I was like, okay, that's slightly better. Like, I mean, at least it wasn't as brutal as I thought it was, which is very interesting because it's something that you can't help but notice of the situation. Rachel she wanted to stab her mom, but it's like whether she really 100% wanted to kill her. Obviously, with what she did, it doesn't seem like it, because she ended up bandaging up her mom. Obviously, she let her mom bleed out a little bit just to kind of let her suffer a little bit. Even let her kind of crawl or kind of get away on her own and try and bandage herself up to that degree. But when it was all said and done, when her mom kind of passed out from the pain and blood loss, she still bandaged her up. So, whether she'll admit it or not, she still loved her, Susan, because Susan is still her mom, even though they disagree and she doesn't like her very much. Hasn't liked her for a very long time, because it's like, you faked your death, you abandoned me. let me think you were dead, so screw you, Mom, essentially, but she still cares about it. And Susan's the same way, because even though she sees what Rachel is doing, because she basically is believing, like, Rachel, you're an idiot for doing what you're doing, because those people on the board will turn on you. You are just nothing more than property to them. You think you're putting yourself in a position to have a free will of your own, but it's like all you're going to be doing is belonging to someone else. It would just be used like a tool. But even with all that said and done, she wasn't able to kill her own daughter. Even when she was in the process of almost killing Sarah, that was pretty brutal. Just out of nowhere, just like bashed her on, like, repeatedly on the back with her cane. Looks like she probably even broke maybe one of her fingers on her other hand with it, and then stabbing her in the leg. I thought she was going to keep, like, messing it up so that Sarah would kind of be in a position like her and having trouble walking. I thought that's kind of what she was kind of aiming for. I thought she was going to dig it a little deeper, which she kind of pushed it and wiggled it around, but that was about it. And when Sarah was pulling it out her leg, I was like, oh yeah, Sarah's about to stab her in the back. It's like, no, Sarah just ran away. Sarah's not really big on killing anyone. I mean, in retrospect, now I'm thinking about it, she's never actually killed anyone, has she? I don't think so. I mean, the closest to that was Helena. She attempted to kill Helena, but she didn't actually kill her. So she's never actually killed anyone. So I guess that's one reason why, even though she hates Rachel a lot. Probably one of the more lighthearted aspects of the episode was the whole Crystal situation. I love it that they finally brought her in on everything, but it turns out, like, she doesn't believe them. She's like, oh, the clone. You actually think she looks like me? Like, we look nothing alike. For one, my boobs are bigger, and plus her hair is a mess. It's like, at best, she's a 7. I've always been told I'm a 10. And it's just like, you can see Sarah looking like this bitch. She has the audacity. She's like, I hate you. Just has so much spite for it, especially because Sarah's like asking her a question while she's doing her whole explanation, and then she's kind of like, who are you? It's like, you could tell Sarah just wanted to punch her in her face. A very different clone from most. Like I said, what I love about the show too is just they're not exact copies. On a DNA level, they are, but they all have their own quirks, traits, and personalities, and that's just what makes them all so special. But also in this episode, it kind of coincides because it's dealing with the same thing. We end up finding out, we kind of get finally a full-scale picture of the whole Delphine situation. Turns out the one that shot her was Duco, so just extra more reason why he deserved to be dead, I guess. Lucky for her, Delphine and Crystal was there. If her phone hadn't gone off, Duco would have finished Delphine off. But luckily, the guys, the van pulled up, and then we turn out to find out it's like, oh, that mentor dude to Evie is the one that saved her. I was like, why is Neo-Lucian trying to save her? Because it was also brought up because it's like, yo, Evie's the one that tried to kill her, so why is Neo-Lucian also helping her? Turns out he kind of responds to someone else, the guy that Rachel has been seeing in her eye. Apparently he's also the one that made it. He's also someone that Susan does in fact know because he does live on that island. I kind of figured as much. But she kind of brought up the fact is that things were kind of pushed. Like in the past, she was like last episode, because it got asked by Cosima about like why Charlotte kind of had to be rushed, because you see the condition her legs in, but it's because Susan was like, she kind of had to answer to someone else, and Cosima was like, who? And she didn't give an answer. Could only assume it's this guy, who we then turn out to find out is actually apparently the guy freaking started Neo-Lucian, even though that was back, like, wasn't that the 1800s? Maybe older. This dude is definitely extremely old. And then, because Susan kind of beat around the bush, she's like, you know who he is. It's like, that's not possible. Well, with him it is. So we kind of got a little bit of an immortality thing going on here. A science fictional version of immortality. Like, is this real? Like, how did he accomplish that? And what does he want with all this? Because, I mean, we had Delphine and Cosima being reunited, and I thought that was very sweet. And then, like, the moment, it's like, obviously you're trying to help her because she's recovering from hypothermia, but it's like, okay, you're making an excuse to get naked and snuggling up to your ex. I know, it's just something I couldn't help in the back of my mind. It's like, you're making an excuse to get naked, like, half naked. Next to your ex, that's all it is. But you could tell Cosima was so happy. It's just, talked about finding the cure, but Delphine told her not to tell anyone else, because it seems like the guy running the show there, the one that's supposed to be the guy who runs Neo-Lucian, I'm the guy who made Neo-Lucian, He's referred to as the messenger. Like I said, I don't actually remember his name. It's been said plenty of times because people have been referencing that book, the kind of Neolution book. But nevertheless, there's that, and it's like, I don't know. It's very interesting, like, like to find out what their plan is, like, because it doesn't seem like they necessarily have anything. Like, I'm trying to understand what him and Delphine were going on about, because essentially, Delphine is like, just leave her alone, leave her to me for now, so that she can be my patient. Because it's like, I don't know whether he's really okay with clones or not. It seemed like he was okay with Rachel because he told Rachel not to falter with what she needed to do. So, I don't know. Maybe he was okay with clones, but maybe specifically he was like, oh, keep your distance from her. Like, we have plans for Cosima, so we're going to have to cut off contact from you. This would be some of the last times you see her or something. I don't know. Also makes you wonder. Obviously, Charlotte should be okay. But, I mean, considering, like, talking about Cosima's condition, like, she was obviously coughing up blood, but as you can see them walking through, it could have just been a hypothermia, but her skin was getting super pale. So I was like, dude, I was like, literally like, please don't die, Cosima. Please don't die. Please don't die. Please don't die. I love you. Please don't die. And it seems like she's okay for now. And I don't know where this is all headed, because at the same time, in her weakened state, Sarah tried to go to the boat, but she got called by Ferdinand, who's basically got a gun pointed at Siobhan and Kira. So, which kind of going back to that, I love that they kind of came back to each other. For a second, and I forgot that it was going to lead to that, because I was like, oh yeah, because everything he's done up to this point has been about getting Rachel, leaving, kind of enjoying their peace, and then coming back to take over things. I didn't like that, because like it did seem like Rachel was just like, oh, I've kind of lost feelings. So to me, it sounded almost, how I interpret it is like, oh, I kind of lost a little bit of my libido. And then he's like, oh, like kind of that's like everything he's sacrificed for. The fact is, like, that large sum of money I've lost. Once again, 3.7 million, if you didn't remember that number exactly, throwing it back out there. And just like everything he sacrificed to get to her and, try and create this life with her. And he talked about the fact is her eye being a repulsive or repugnant thing. I don't remember the word he used exactly. And she slapped him. And he's like, yes. And then they really started getting into it. She takes her cane and puts it like up against his private. It's just like, and he's getting off on it. And it's just like, yeah, you forget just how twisted that relationship is, because he even talked about the fact is that Cain represents more than just like showing, helping her out. It could be used obviously in a perverted sense as well, which it was, because like he was tied to the bed and she was hitting him and choking him. It's like, God, they're just like the weirdest couple in this show. But yeah, just overall a really amazing episode, obviously with the twists and turns. So many questions I want answered. The fact is matter is like, who is this, like, obviously what is that group, the one that's led by the guy referred to as the messenger, him, what's Rachel's plan now? Obviously, well, we got a little taste of it, but like, how far is she going to go with this? What's she going to do with Susan? Obviously she bandaged her up, so she doesn't plan on killing her, maybe. Whole Ferdinand situation, like, is Sarah going to be kind of kept in check? It's like, oh, like, what do they want Sarah to do? It's like, because I mean, obviously Rachel wants her dead. That was the whole point. Rachel wanted to kind of hurt her a little bit. What's going on? But had plans on killing her. Obviously, she missed at Sarah when she was shooting her. I guess it's just because, out of anybody, I don't think Rachel's actually had any practice with a gun. Sarah has. I mean, obviously from her being with Beth, pretending to be Beth, she learned how to shoot from Allison, because Beth's the one that taught Allison. But it's just on so many levels, so much. It's like, what's going to happen with Helena and her babies, Donnie and Allison. It does seem like they are a little clear from Neolution. Neolution's not going to be coming after them, because the only one that was really coming after them was Evie. And now that she's kind of been taken out of the picture, I don't think the board really gives a crap about the clones. I mean, but now that Rachel's kind of stepped in a position, maybe they will, because they're going to be implanting bots into them. I don't know. Makes you wonder what's going to happen with Crystal, what kind of new clones we might meet next season, because the show has been renewed for another season. Sadly, this next season will be the last, which I kind of was like halfway expecting it, just because with the way what the story is, it's kind of like, it's not something they could drag on forever and ever. it would have like a definite ending to it. And I rather, no, like I said, I always prefer like a show going in and being like, yeah, this is our final season, rather than being like, oh yeah, this is just another season. Maybe we'll get picked up for another season, maybe not. It's like I'd rather go in thinking like knowing that this will be the end, that it'll all be leading up to a definite conclusion. So I am highly curious to see where this show goes. Like, so many questions that need to be answered, like where this is all going to go. Like, from my understanding, it sounded like Rachel has like the stuff that Cosima worked on to create the cure, what they're going to use to make more clones. It sounds like she has her hands on it. I don't know if Cosima memorized exactly what was necessary to make the cure. I mean, she's a very smart person, because she did splice everything together. So it's like, maybe even without what Rachel created, maybe with, just being as smart as she is, Cosima can recreate it if they bring together more, of Iris' specimen and more Sarah's eggs. He wasn't brought up this season. The last time we saw him was last season. I'm just surprised he wasn't brought up more, because it seemed like he played a critical role in everything. Is Mark. We haven't seen him since he kind of left off with that girl. What's her name? Wasn't her name Gracie? Like the girl he was kind of with. Like that's kind of the last time we actually saw him is when they kind of dragged the lady who was like training the caster soldiers, kind of dragged her out of hiding, essentially by having him kind of get beaten to a pulp. That was kind of the last time we saw Mark. But makes you wonder what part Ira's going to play on in all of this, because he is very concerned about Susan. Obviously, he's there as a bargaining chip. I mean, it does make you wonder, because Ferdinand's got a gun on both of them, S and Kira. Makes you wonder where Felix and Art are. Makes you wonder, will that come back up to bite Art in the ass, the whole Duco situation? Not really. It was brought up, but that was kind of just from a Neo-Lucian standpoint. I don't know if that was kind of brought up on a cop. Like, it's like, oh yeah, Duco, you haven't seen him around. Like, you know anything? I don't know. Maybe it will. Like, it makes you wonder, will they kind of bring that up in the next season? Any ramifications for, like, getting caught up in all of this? Like, that's another thing, too. Maybe that will come out in final season. Like, the truth will be like, yo, clones, we exist. We're out here. Give us rights. We want to have our free will and not be property to people. We're tired of being caught up in all of this mess. It's like, oh, if you're out there and you look like me, yo, know that we're clones and you're not alone. We're all sisters, maybe kind of bring the casters as well as the leaders together. I feel like out of anybody, it's going to be Sarah that brings all the leader clones together. Maybe that's, kind of what the next season will be about, like kind of bringing everyone together, bringing this deep, dark secret out into the light. Maybe. I don't know. Be very interested to see. And maybe we'll finally get some freaking answers about Kira. I need to know, like, what makes her special. I mean, granted, it makes sense because her mom's special, because, Sarah's an abnormality, because all leaders were created to be, infertile. But it's like, out of anyone, she was the only one that was able to get pregnant and have Kira. So that already makes her special. Plus, she's immune to the sickness that affects the leaders. I mean, obviously it affects the casters too, but it affects them in a different way. I do find it interesting. Why does it work like that? Has that ever been explained? Why leaders get sick and die when the casters just kind of lose their damn minds? It's kind of, I just find it interesting. It's actually kind of a cool, obviously it sucks, but it's like a very interesting fact is that it affects them in two separate ways, even though technically they come from the same person, Kendall. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting. But find out like what makes Kira so special, and also makes you wonder: will we ever see Kira's dad again? Maybe the actor who plays her dad is kind of busy at the time, conflict of schedule. Because the last time we saw him was in season 3, so we we've heard him mention, just no height. We didn't actually see him in this season, so. I feel like out of anybody, just because they always find a way to get stirred up in some trouble, what are we going to see Donnie and Allison into next season? Because literally every season they find something to kind of get caught up in. Let's not forget Allison, obviously she's got her, booze problems, and as well as the whole like killing her best friend by accident thing. She didn't really do it, but she didn't really help her. Then there's this whole Donnie killing Leaky, then them selling drugs, and then Helena ended up killing the guys that they were connected to about selling drugs. It makes you wonder will that kind of come back. I feel like that's kind of something that's going to get dropped now that Evie's kind of been taken out of the picture, and maybe they're not just going to be as anal about trying to go after Allison and Donnie. I mean, because really that was all for the purposes of trying to get close to, like, get Allison to help them get to Sarah. So makes you wonder what kind of other clones will be introduced to next season. It's never like I said, we never get introduced to a lot of clones per season, but there's a few here and there kind of introduced throughout. So. Also wondering, will Felix kind of repair things with Adele? Last episode, things didn't work out that well. She's kind of keeping her distance from him because it's like, okay, you and your family's got secrets. They're your real family. I guess blood doesn't really matter. Kind of left Felix a little brokenhearted. So I'm very interested to see where things go from there. Hopefully Scott will get his partner, obviously Cosima, back in one piece, and everything will be honky-dory. We can only hope that, obviously she's kind of in possibly enemy territory. Don't know they're good guys, bad guys. They kind of have an immortal on their side, so it's hard to, when it comes to that whole immortality thing, it's kind of like, you never know which way it can go, because, someone could have, be a nice person, start off with the best of intention, but live long enough, those intentions could easily be swayed, because it's like, what does he have in store? Because it does seem like he's backing whatever Rachel is doing, because he wants Rachel to be in whatever position she's currently in. Hence why he made the eye and has been showing her all that stuff. I don't know. So many questions. I just love the show. Like I said, a little saddened by the fact that this will be the final season, because I only recently kind of got back in touch with the show. Like the first time I got up to about around the time I started watching the show, like I got up to about like the 5th episode of season 2 while season 2 was still on. Kind of like fell behind, and it wasn't until a little bit before this season premiere that I finally caught up, and I'm so upset at myself for not getting caught up sooner, because the show is so good. I love all the clones, and it's not like. And it's not to sell the non-clone characters short either, because all the like major and major as well as recurring non-clone characters I've fallen in love with too. I might have to say I don't know. Felix might be like my favorite non-clone character. I don't know. I love all the non-clone characters too much, but I have to probably say Felix might be up there. Really good show. Like if you have anyone that has not watched the show yet, try and convince them to watch the show, because the next season, obviously, how show seasons work, so it won't be until next year that we get the 5th and final season. But I'm very interested to see what direction they take the show with some of these mysteries that we still haven't gotten answered, and just like how it will all end. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.